Hey friends, and welcome to the Happy Hour with Jamie Ivey podcast. I'm your host, Jamie, and I'm so glad you're here. Each week on this show, I invite a friend to join me, and we chat about the big things in life, the little things in life, and everything in between. Tiffany, welcome to the Happy Hour.
It's so great to be here, Jamie.
Okay, so introduce yourself to everybody.
Tiffany Daniels. I am married to a pastor, been married 33 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I have 3 grown kids. They're spread out between Seattle, Nashville, and Fort Worth, and 2 little grandkids.
Where are the grandkids?
They're in Fort Worth.
Okay,
They're close
good.
to me,
I was
which
going to
is
ask.
Awesome.
That's the best. That's
Yeah.
the best. And you lead a ministry that's near and dear to my heart. Tell us about the ministry you lead.
Sure. I have been leading There4 gathering for 8 years now. And it is a conference we do every February in Fort Worth. We've also taken it to Rwanda twice, and we'll be heading back to Uganda this coming summer, and done a couple mini conferences in D.C.
How many have you done in D.C.?
Two. Those 2 that you were with me.
Oh, wait, I was like, I've been to one.
Well, we did.
That's
we
right.
did 2.
That's right.
For 2 different groups of girls.
Oh, my gosh.
So I know those. During COVID, that was crazy.
That was crazy during COVID.
Yeah.
And the girls that came, I mean, it was like the first thing they had been to.
Yeah.
Because they had not been back in school yet.
Yep.
It was really, really awesome.
Yeah.
And Story, my daughter, came with me.
I know. That was so sweet.
I asked her this year if she wanted to come to There4. We have a church event the same weekend. It happens every year. And she's like, I've already been to There4, remember? And I was like, oh, yeah, but this is different. This is different. So, Tiffany, I'm glad you're here. I was thinking this morning when I was going to interview you, which you're my first interview of the year. I'm so excited. But I was like, when and how did we meet? And I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, we kept being in the same location over and over in Fort Worth at that benefit lunch. We just showed up and we're like, oh, you're here? And finally, I think...
Do we have a mutual friend?
We have lots of mutual friends.
I mean, now I know that, but at that point...
Melissa Ice, I think
yeah,
at the Net. We met there. We sat next to each other. We didn't really know each other. I helped you
at
adjust your
that
microphone.
conference that I spoke at.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
yes.
It wasn't a conference. It was a benefit lunch. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's...
This is so weird. I had on a red dress.
Yep.
I remember that.
I remember. Yeah, and the rest is history.
You helped me adjust my mic?
Yeah, I did.
Because it was probably attached to my bra or something.
Yep, exactly.
This is so Jamie Ivey. I meet you, we don't know each other, and I'm like, hey, can you reach back in my dress and mess with my bra?
Yep.
This is how I live my life. Yes, and now we've been friends for a long time.
That's fun.
Well, when I think about you, here's what I think about. I think about someone who is a pursuer in the best way possible. I speak at conferences. It's part of my job. I love it so much. The weird thing about being someone who goes in and speaks and preaches and teaches to people that you probably will never see again, that's a part of it, is there's this beautiful thing that happens usually on a weekend, and hopefully you connect to the people putting it on, and hopefully it goes well. That's usually 9 out of 10 times, right? But there's 2 events in my life that I will always say yes to. I've told you this. And one of them is There4. And one of the main reasons is because you take There4 weekend and your speakers, and you actually were like, I want to invest in you and I want to believe in you. And there probably I can count on less than one hand the amount of people in my life that I know if they tell me they're praying for me, they literally are. And you were one of them.
Thank you. It's a privilege. And I think relationship is so important in God's economy, and I love that we get to do it together. And this is, I'm not ever leaving you. So there you go.
I got choked up there because I just really do feel loved and pursued by you in so many ways. Okay, let's talk about There4.
Yeah.
I'm a mom to a teen daughter. Story. She's been on the show before, which was so fun. And you have a conference that's geared just for teen girls. I want to hear the origin story of There4 and why and when and all the things.
Yeah. So my teen daughter, when she was a teen, she's 23 now. So walking through her teen years, and really honestly, Jamie, there were some challenging things that happened in her life and her peer group, and I felt like I got to see behind the curtain of how challenging it can be, and it was, to be a teen in today's culture.
Yeah.
So I ended up, I heard about a conference that was happening for, I think, for 6th through 12th grade girls at the time. And I kind of did, Hail Mary, I'm taking you here, and you're going to hear from someone other than your mother about what God says about, being your identity and being a teenager and the things that you're struggling with. And I went to that. It was pivotal in her spiritual life.
Wow.
We walked away, and I said, I am bringing back all the girls that I've discipled that are in my student ministry. I'm committed. I'm from here on out. And unbeknownst to me, that was the last year that they did that event. So I was heartbroken, and I was like, how? I just found this, and this was so significant in my daughter's life. So literally for 2 years after that, I looked around for something similar to that and asked my friends and told my friends, y'all, somebody needs to start a conference for high school girls. Somebody needs to do this. Like, there's nothing out there. And now I'm thinking specifically 9th through 12th grade girls.
Yeah.
And I was at IF Gathering in 2015, and Jenny was speaking something from the stage, directly to me, of course.
Obviously.
Like, where is God calling you that you're afraid to go? And I knew at that moment that God was impressing on my heart, Tiffany Daniels, stop looking around for somebody else to do this. I am calling you to step out and launch a conference for high school girls. And I mean, that's how it happened.
And that was in 2015. And here we are.
And so I go back home, and I literally was sitting in my living room with like 9 of my best friends, and I spoke the words like, I'm starting a conference for high school girls. Like, who's with me? Like, I'm jumping. I've got to jump just out of sheer obedience. And they're like, we don't know where you're going, but we'll go with you. And I mean, that's how it started.
That is so crazy.
And yeah.
Okay, so I want to backtrack here just for a minute. And first of all, I need to say happy birthday.
Thank you.
The day we're recording, today's your birthday. You told me I can ask you this for the whole world to know. How old are you?
We're going there, huh?
We're going there.
I'm 58.
Is that hard to say?
A little bit, because I don't feel 58.
Whatever 58 is, Tiffany Daniels does not scream it.
Yeah.
The reason I asked that is because you were not starting a conference for teen girls in your 30s.
No.
You were starting a conference for teen girls in what some people would say you're past the time of starting something, which I really disagree with. You know what I just found out? That Barbara Walters was 68 when she started The View.
Wow.
She just passed away.
Yeah.
She was 68 when she started The View. And that has stuck with me so much. Jackie Hill Perry and I just had a conversation a couple weeks ago. We talked about age. And I had another friend that started something in her. I'm just like, God is putting something on me of thinking this way. And so now I'm sitting here with you, and I'm just like, you started this at a time when people were saying it's time for me to rest.
Right. I know.
And so can we talk about that for a minute? Because two things I think women sometimes struggle with. Either in their 30s, this is a big thing I hear from women in their 30s. They're like, I want to be doing something bigger. Like, I'm not doing enough. And now as a 45-year-old and you as a 58-year-old want to go, wait, the best is ahead. Like, hold on. Or women, 50, 55, 58, go, I'm too old. What should I be doing?
You're never too old.
Did you fall into either one of those categories?
I think so. I mean, I feel like I might have felt like God was, God was building something in me and using all of those decades before I turned 50 so that I could do what he called me to do and assigned me to do when I turned 50, right?
So good.
Yeah.
Did you feel that then, though? Or do you look back and see that?
So I look back, for sure. I'm a pastor's wife, and I feel like I've always kind of like stayed in the shadows. I'm a huge cheerleader for my husband, support. My home is a haven, but I'm not one to jump out in front and lead something. And yet, God said, well, here you go.
Yeah.
And yet he didn't waste any of that time that he was pouring into me and building the experiences. I feel like I have all these buckets of experience now that he's using for me to lead.
It's almost like nothing's wasted.
Nothing's wasted.
Which I remember I'm doing some work for a book I'm working on, and I was listening to an old podcast, and it was with Beth Moore, and she talked about how even hard things in life. She doesn't want to say, I want to do that again, but she looked back and say, God used it for something.
Yes.
And I think that's what we can look at here and just say
100%.
like, man, you look back on your life and go, this is what you're preparing me for. Now, when I go to that 2015 IF gathering,
Yep.
I was been at every one.
there.
I was
Yeah.
there. You hear from God. It's not somebody, it's you, Tiffany.
Yeah.
You go home, you're processing this, you tell your friends, this is what I want to do. I want to talk about you hearing from God that this is okay. Because I think a lot of times people think to themselves, I can't hear from God. I'm not hearing from God. God's not talking to me. Does he see me? Does he care about what my dreams are? And so can you talk about that part of that journey of you really going, I think God's telling me to do this?
Yeah. Jamie, I think it is our posture in being able to really listen to the Lord. I think if we posture ourselves in the Word with people around us that are speaking God's truth over us, that we're being challenged by, that we're, walking with in life, and we're intentionally leaving time to be still and to listen to the Lord, then whatever He tells us or impresses on our hearts, we're ready to receive it. I think so. The discipline of doing those things made me ready, if that makes sense, to hear and to not be afraid, even though it might have been really scary. It was really scary at the time to go, what in the world? Like, I don't know how to lead a conference. I don't know how to start and book talent. I mean, I knew none of that. And yet God said, that's okay. I've gone ahead of you and I've been working in you and I'm with you.
Wow. And then you trusted him.
And then I totally trusted him and I jumped. I think
you literally, it's like you jumped out of an airplane.
It was. And I think that's what he's taught me. Like, I've seen enough of him now to know that my yes isn't a scary, God's not in it yet. He's there. He's already there. It's just, he's going, come along with me for the ride. And what a ride.
That's so good.
How awesome to take those risks in our faith.
When you just said like he's there with you, it's almost like we sometimes imagine God like on the other side of the world, on the other side of the hallway, on the other side of something saying, hey, come over here and walk towards me. But you just said God's like, hey, come on, I'm going to walk with you. And that feels so much better.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you were talking about hearing God's voice, I haven't thought about this in a really long time, but when I ran when I was in middle school and high school, I ran competitive track. Yeah. And I had a coach. His name was Coach Wilmington. So I listened to him and I wanted to learn by him. And I remember I would be at track meets and there'd be fans in the stand and races going on and an announcer. And it never failed. Wherever Coach Wilmington was, I always heard his voice. And it's because I knew to listen for his voice. Like I heard his voice at practice every day. And that's the voice that was telling me what to do. Yeah. I knew to listen. And I've never really thought about that until just now of like, I could hear his voice even among all of the noise. Yeah. Because he had trained me and I had trained myself to hear his voice. That's kind of what you're saying.
Absolutely. I think Mark Batterson wrote a book, I think it's called something about whispering, but he talks about a whispering spot, like those places that we kind of tune our ears. For me, it's in my garden, like being outside, or it's running. I feel like I can really commune with God because I'm undistracted. Yeah. And so I think identifying those places where, you are intent about listening to God's voice.
Do you listen to anything when you run? That's a totally side note.
I listen to Jamie Ivey podcasts.
A lot of people listen to podcasts when they run.
A lot of times I listen to podcasts, or I have my own Spotify like worship list where if I'm really being prayerful about something and asking God for answers, that is a holy time for me. It really is.
I say that when I used to be a runner, I'm a walker, that when I'm walking in my neighborhood is when I get so many ideas.
Yes.
And even if I'm listening to a podcast, like I think I can do many things at one time in my brain, which is good sometimes and bad sometimes. But I'll be listening to something and I'll pause it and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to chase this. Yeah. And then I usually send a Voxer to Lindsay and be like, here's my idea.
You get it. I mean, and I hold that time I'm super protective of it. You
told me about that. Yeah, that you're going to run every day.
Yeah.
You run every day.
Every day. And I have what I call the green zone. We talked about this, like that early morning hours that are sacred to me, that I try not to let anything else interfere. I don't set meetings past X time.
What is it for you?
Well, it's about 6:30 to 9:30.
Okay,
and
I like this.
And that's my time in the Word, and that's my time running, and that's my time dreaming and writing and processing.
So you and I talked about this in the fall, and I was expressing my lack of missing that time. Yeah. And I have made some changes I would like for you to know. When I went through to set up my 2023 calendar, I went through and put every morning 7 to 10. Awesome. It says morning time.
That's awesome.
Now, today we're recording on, Wednesday the 4th, your birthday.
Yeah.
I will know that from now on. And we've only been back at work for like 2 days. Yeah. And, but this morning I had to be up here early because I had my confessional community. And so we're online from 7 to 10. Wow. So I got to work at 6:30 and I got up so early and I literally was like, I like this. This is great. I've gotten so much work done by 2:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, no, it feels good.
It feels good. But okay, back to There4.
Yeah.
Jumping out of the airplane, going for it, all the things. I want to talk to you and ask you questions about fear and how you walk towards that, because you have a successful conference now. And so we're looking backwards. But there are a lot of people who are listening who I think they have that nudge, and this show comes out at the beginning of a year. A lot of times at the beginning of the year, people say, this is the year that I'm going to chase that dream. This is the year I'm going to do that. I saw Ann Voskamp just put up an Instagram post about how much she did last year, not in like a bragging, but dreams she'd been chasing. Yeah. And her encouragement was like, chase it, just do it. Yeah. So it's easy for us to say that, but take me back to 2015, 16, 17. What did that feel like? And how did you keep walking forward?
So I think I had to say to myself, what is the worst thing that could happen?
Ooh, what's your Enneagram number?
I'm a 2 with a very strong wing 3.
Okay, I'm a 6 and I live in what's the worst thing.
Okay.
So call me next time. I'll tell you all the worst things that could possibly happen.
But I don't live in that world, but I'm kind of like, I'm the dreamer. I'm like, just chase after it, just do it. And if I fail, there will be something else that will fill that, right? So I think, prayer, number one, and having a good support system around you that is just, like Aaron held up Moses' arm when he was weak. And getting to the place of surrender where it's not about me. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's about the Lord and his glory and his renown. And so that, I think, dispels some of the fear or the fear of failure if I'm walking with the Lord and I feel like I'm hearing his voice and he's with me, then what really do I have to fear?
Yeah. It makes me think there are so many times, though, when people think to themselves, failure would be the worst thing that could happen. And you just said, like, what would be, like, what if I fail? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that your personality?
Oh, that's
because some people just got
question.
Sweaty. Like, no, failure would be the worst thing that could happen.
I need to think about that. I mean, but failure's part of life, isn't it? I mean, don't I kind of fail all day, every day in some things,
Yeah. But a lot of people, when they're chasing a dream, though, they feel like that's public failure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It makes me think of when I started my podcast in 2014. Yeah. So almost 9 years ago. I didn't expect it to be where we are today. Yeah. So that's a little bit of like, that was good for me because I wasn't as scared. Had I known what I'd be doing today, I would have been so afraid.
Same.
Okay, yeah.
Same.
Maybe that's a good thing. It's like you don't know what you don't know.
You just take it in little bites. Maybe it's the way that we lay out the expectation when we're risking something or jumping into something that we're kind of like, I could fail. So maybe it's the level of expectation that we put out there.
Oh, I like that.
On ourselves.
Right.
And on whatever it is that we're doing.
Yeah.
Huh.
Okay, so you took this big risk. Yeah. You started There4. Yeah. You have had 11 conferences. Yep. 2 of those have been in Rwanda. You're going to Uganda this summer.
Yes.
Let me rephrase that. We are going to Uganda this summer. I told you that I'll just follow you to the ends of the earth, Tiffany, and here we are. But tell us about the conference. I mean, here's what I want people to know that this is out there, first of all, because I go every year and it saddens me that my daughter hasn't been. But there's something every year on the same weekend with our church group. So you know this.
And we've tried.
And we've
tried to schedule.
You can't change it just because of the Awesome Stone. But it is so amazing. And so I want you to tell us a little bit about the conference, what your heart is, and then even go into like what's happening this year at the conference.
Yeah. So it is a 2-day event. It's a Friday evening and all day Saturday. And I like to say we bring in the best talent speakers.
And I'm not saying that because I'm there.
I know.
I'm like, yeah.
Like God's favor has been on these women that speak God's truth over this next generation.
Yeah.
and our worship is amazing. And I think here's the thing. We have a group of 30 or so teen leadership girls. They're our teen board. And they give us relevancy. Is that a word?
Yeah.
They are the ones that lead and keep us relevant to what's going on in their lives and what they need to talk about and what they're struggling with.
Which I want to stop you real quick. This is so good because I know you have a teen board. I know all those things, but I've never heard you say it like that. And it is this act of you saying, I want to start this. I have more resources than these teen girls do, more wisdom, more years, all the things. I can get these people. But you're going, hey, if we want to reach teenagers, we need to know what teenagers are struggling with because Tiffany, you and I are not struggling with the same thing that the 15-year-olds are.
And we don't have the cool factor anymore.
We have lost it.
So they speak into this whole event. I mean, down to what is a cool t-shirt design.
Wow, I love it.
Yeah, so they're telling us anxiety, depression, friendships is one of the top things that these teens are struggling with. Sexual identity. Yeah. So we bring together this buffet for them of the relevant topics. And each of this 8 or 9 speakers speak to each of those topics. And literally, I think girls' lives are changed. We want them to have an encounter with Jesus. We want them to see God's word as true and right and relevant for their lives. I had a 70-year-old woman. I want to tell you the story. I had a 70-year-old woman walk up to me last week. She had served as a volunteer the weekend of There4 a couple years ago. And she said to me, do you remember the year that the theme was worthy? She said, when I served and listened in to the conference that weekend, she goes, do you know that no one has ever told me that in my entire life? And that weekend serving you changed my life. And I'm like, whoa.
Wow.
We do not want women to be 70 years old before they hear that they are deeply loved and valued by their Father in heaven.
Wow.
So that's part of what drives me is these stories of get the girls in the room, let them know that they are not alone. They're all walking into that room, 1,500 of them in person. And they're each carrying something. It may not be the same thing that the girl sitting next to them is carrying, but they're carrying something that they need to feel like God sees and that he knows and he understands them. So that's the heart behind what we do.
And it happens.
Yeah, it does.
What's your theme this year?
Our theme is
chosen
generation from 1 Peter 2:9.
Yep.
And then the second half of that verse is walking in the light of Christ. What does it mean to walk in the light of Christ?
Who is it? Is it the same verse that says, who brought you out of darkness into the marvelous light?
Yeah.
I think I'm preaching on the first part.
You are.
Okay, there you go. I haven't started yet. I'm sorry, Tiffany.
Yeah, and you are sharing the gospel. I mean, and I think that's big too, is that the gospel is clearly communicated to these girls when they're with us.
Yeah, which is so good because I grew up in church and you're a pastor's wife. And I'm sure you see this to be true a little bit as well, as I think so many times in churches, and I want to say this in a very kind way because I love the church and I think the local church is where God is moving. Sometimes it can be assumed that someone knows the truths of the gospel. Right. And so I love that you guys every single year are going to lay out the gospel and not just start assuming everyone walking in is a non-believer. Well, I'm excited. If anyone wants to go, it's in February.
24th and 25th.
24th and 25th, Fort Worth, Texas.
And also live streamed around the world. We've reached, girls in upwards of 30 countries.
That's so crazy.
Through our live stream. And the pandemic, thank you.
Yeah.
Kind of pivoted us into that whole thing. So that's fun.
We'll put links in the show notes, but it's There4gathering.com.
There4gathering.com.
There you go. Highly, highly, highly recommend it for your teen girls. So much for your high school girls. So I want to talk about this. Is it okay if we talk about San Quentin?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if we could or not.
Yeah, I think so. For sure.
So you've been.
Yes.
So you and I are going.
In a couple weeks.
In a couple weeks. After this will air, this comes out on the 20th. Yeah. We're going the early February. Yeah. The 9th.
Yeah, right.
You know that I did jail ministry a long time ago.
And me too.
Yeah. Okay. So one other thing I want to figure out in my life, and you and I can talk about this another time because you're so good for me, is I have gone through phases in the last couple of years of volunteering, pulling back because I get too busy, volunteering, pulling back. And it's just, I said there are a couple things I really miss in my life since I've started working more. One is a book club, which is so funny, but I miss a book club. I love my book club. I was in it for years. And I really miss serving.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that's embarrassed to say that, like, we'll just go serve, but seasons have just been harder. So I spent a lot of time at our county jail here, and I know you've done that as well. And so I can't tell you how excited I am and how honored I feel to be invited on this journey. But can you tell us, like, what are we doing? I literally am like, tell me as we tell the world.
So I think this goes back to the whole risk thing and doing things outside the box or outside your normal day-to-day.
Because I think what you're about to tell me is like, so like, what? You did what? Yeah.
And I mean, I think, why not?
Why not?
Why not stretch yourself and why not risk? Right? Okay. So even
this is so you. Now that I know you, I have zero surprise in me about what you're about to say.
Okay, so you want to know about San Quentin. So we show up and we go through like 3.
No, wait, time out. I want you to go. I thought you were going to tell a story. Like, how are you connected to Bob Goff?
Oh.
I mean, didn't you just reach out to him?
Well, so he coached me for a while.
Okay.
And then we've just become great friends. And I think we think a lot alike. Like, we're like, just do it. Just dream big. Like, that's his whole mantra. And just get beyond yourself and do it. So he's a yes guy, and I think he's taught me to just be a yes girl, I asked him. I just said, hey, you go to San Quentin.
Can I go with you?
He's like, come on. So, he just worked that all out. But that is a once in a lifetime. That is quite an experience that is life-changing because I think a lot of people live in fear of, well, what if? What if I get inside those walls of that state penitentiary and something goes crazy? But, right? You get in, and I will tell you that the sweetest surprises happen. God is doing a work inside that jail. And God is there, and he's with those men, and he is giving them purpose, and he is giving them, he's equipping the people that serve and lead them there with tools so that when they are outside and done with their time, that they feel value and worth. Yeah. And it has opened my eyes, I think, to see people through Christ's lens. And I think that's the way God wants us to look at everybody, whether it's the gal that served me my tea at Burger Street, or whether it's, the person standing on the street corner or in the jail or wherever. I mean, that's the heart of Christ.
Yeah.
That's God.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know.
I'm super excited. And I have said 3 times already in the show that I'm Enneagram 6, which is worst case scenario. I can be driven by fear and worry and anxiety. Yeah. But I'm also an Enneagram 6 who goes towards it. Yeah. Jaleesa McCurry, you know her. Yeah. She does stuff with There4. She's been on the show before. We're the same. Yeah. Like, we're going to go towards our fear. Yeah. And so I love that about myself. I'm grateful. But when I had a couple of moments when I was at the jail here, I was there for a couple of years, and I know a couple of moments where I was walking and I just happened to be at the right time when there was changing of people moving and stuff. And I got that fear. Yeah. And it's like a moment where I was able to like really lean into it and ask God, like, okay, it's normal that I'm afraid because the people I'm walking next to are convicted of a crime. Yeah. But also, God, will you help me just see this person as like, this is someone's son, this is someone's daughter. Yes. This is someone's husband or wife, and it transformed my life. It does. Like, the fear still came sometimes.
Yes, it does.
And I feel like, should I be embarrassed of that? I don't know, but it just did, because we're human.
But don't you feel like the more that you face your fears, the stronger you get?
100%.
When my boys were 19 months and 4 years old, we took them to Russia for the summer. And spent an entire summer serving over there. And my friends thought I was absolutely crazy.
How old were your boys?
19 months old and 4 years old. And like, what are you doing taking your children to Russia? And yet that was a huge step of faith, but it changed me. And every time I step into the fear, I get stronger.
Yes.
So, I mean, we've done crazy things. We could go on and on.
But that is like what people need to know.
Yes.
Is like that first step feels super, and maybe the second, third, and fourth, let's be honest, feels super scary. But then you get 9, 10, 12, and you look back and you're like, look, A, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And B, God, you're with me in this moment. And you're with me in the first step. And you're going to be with me in the 35th step.
And we will never know how God uses the ripple effect of just us moving into our fear to influence and challenge others in their, stepping out. So
I remember when I went to Haiti for the first time, and adoption was not on the radar at all through Haiti, but I went to Haiti for the first time, and my youngest Deacon would have been almost 1. And I remember thinking, what kind of mother leaves their baby at home to go to a third world country without her husband? And it changed my whole life.
Change your life.
It changed my whole life. And I got to how I got on the plane was I said, I want my kids to see me not be afraid.
Yeah.
And I already told you, I feel a lot of fear.
Well,
but I want my kids to not see,
Yeah.
their mom living in fear.
For sure. I was going to bring up the whole alien invasion thing up at the Oaks that we...
Oh, yes. Yes. We had an experience together at the Oaks. And, of course, everyone knew exactly what it was. But I created a scenario that was way out of this world that I could have convinced you all of. I was like, the aliens are coming. They're coming to take us over. Okay, I want to ask you this. How did you get to taking There4 overseas? Because I get to experience this summer.
Yes.
With my daughter's story, which I'm super excited.
Me too.
But where did that come from?
So I'm a real dreamer.
We couldn't tell.
And I think it goes back to just posturing yourself to listen to the voice of God. And from the very, very beginning of There4, the Lord told me this conference is not just for girls in the States. It's for girls around the world. So I had that on my heart, that God has a heart for the world and for the nations. And probably a year in, he told me, it's crazy, very specifically, I want you to take this to Rwanda. And I went to my board and I said, hey guys, I think we're supposed to take this to Rwanda. And they're like, we don't even know where we're going yet. Like,
where's Rwanda?
Yeah. And yet, so their answer to me was really, I say it felt like a no, but it was really a not yet.
Yeah.
And so I sat back and prayed.
Which isn't bad.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, Lord, if you want this to be, then you're going to lead out on this one. And sure enough, a couple years into doing the conference in the States, in Texas, the Lord, how he does in his beautiful ways, intersected my life with some people at Africa New Life. And the Holy Spirit worked, and the Holy Spirit was like, put me face to face with Pastor Charles at IF Gathering.
Wow.
And I had never met him. And I had that dream on my heart, and essentially just said, I'm going to tell you a dream I have. And he said, let's talk about it tomorrow morning.
See, that's what I'm saying. You're so bold. Like, I don't have that boldness. You say that I do. She whispered that I do.
Yeah.
I don't think I do. Like, I would have been so afraid. Maybe I would. I don't know. I'm just so impressed always with you, listening to God, and then saying like, what's it gonna hurt to ask Pastor Charles?
Yeah.
And I would have been like, well, he might tell me no.
Right.
And you're
I know.
Okay.
Oh.
Pastor Charles is amazing. He's been on the podcast before as well. And I've been to Rwanda with Natalie and Africa New Life, and they do such great work. And so this summer, it's not Africa New Life.
No, it's Katie Davis Major's ministry, Amazima, in Jinja, Uganda.
Which she needs to be on. We've connected. It's just a thing. Yeah.
She's got a great new book coming out too.
Yeah.
So that, and sometimes I think this is a great lesson, is that sometimes you can think you're running a certain direction and that is God's will, and yet he sometimes redirects. And I think just being aware and prayerful to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And he's given us this open door and this new opportunity there. And we're excited to see what he's going to do there.
I'm so excited. I've been to Jinja before. It's beautiful. I have been there before, and it's so beautiful. I'm so excited. In 2020, I was walking through my neighborhood, and I've been walking through the same neighborhood since 2015 and never did I stop and think this. But I was walking through my neighborhood and we have a bunch of hills. And I was walking up one of the hills and there's a sign there. It'd been there since I moved in, but I just noticed it. You've seen the sign 1,000 times as you've been driving. It just said limited sight distance. And it's going up a big hill and it says that. And it's just like, hey, you can't see all the way. And that's what I feel like so often, stepping out in fear, doing what you feel God sensing, calling, talking to you about, but you literally can't see.
You can't see
around the hill. You can't see around the bend, and you just keep walking. The same way in a car. You don't stop when you see the sign. You just proceed with caution, you know? And that's how I feel that There4, Rwanda, Uganda, San Quentin, the Oaks that you have, the retreats, like everything just feels like that you're going, okay, I'll just keep going. It's faith, like you said.
It is. It's faith. And one foot in front of the other and take the next best step. You know, the next step. What's the next step?
Can you tell someone what the next step is? Or is that, I mean, like, I don't mean that jokingly. I mean, like, if someone were to say, like, Tiffany, I feel like God's asking me to do fill in the blank.
So what I've told people when they come to me with like, I have this dream in my heart, but I don't know how to get there, or I don't know if it's the right thing. I'm like, sit down with somebody that you trust, that you know is walking with the Lord, and that you trust their advice and their wisdom. Lob it out there to them and process it, and get somebody to hold you accountable to at least take the next step. What's the next? You don't have to know the end of the line. I think that's where we get stuck.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to know the answer.
Yeah.
It's like, God's going, I'm not going to give you the answer because there's a whole journey of getting there that I want to show you.
Yeah.
And that's part of growing deeper roots and growing our faith. And so just take the next step.
I think the accountability thing is big because it's easy to hold a dream inside and then you get kind of frustrated, like nothing's happening, then nothing's happening. But when you really have someone that's going to say to you, hey, I'm going to ask you about this, you know, and you do that well.
Thank you.
If you share something with Tiffany, she's going to ask you about it. Okay. I just cannot tell you how much I love you. And I'm so proud of all the things that you've done. And I love There4. And if you can get your girls there, you guys, it is so worth it. I can promise you that. I want to ask you what you're reading. Yeah. But first, I want to ask you about your new children's book.
Oh.
I don't have one. Mine's at home, so I can't even show a copy. But tell us about this.
So that was really started out as just a labor of love for my 3-year-old granddaughter named June. Mm-hmm. And I had emptied my bucket list in the last couple of years, and I needed to add another thing to my bucket list.
Guys, listen, I'm sorry. I've emptied my bucket list.
So
I love you.
I'll put a children's book on my bucket list for 2022.
Okay, wait. I have just a few questions real quick.
Yeah.
Do you make a do you have a massive bucket list for your life, or are you like, this year I'd like to do this? Because I have a couple of things. You heard me talk about this with Jackie on my podcast that I look and I have 5 years and literally 5 years, 4 months and 2 days before I turn 50.
Okay.
And I'm excited. I'm excited about it.
50s are amazing.
I'm really excited about my 50s. But there is this sense to me of like, I have 4 years, 4 months and 2 days. What am I going to do? So do you make a big bucket list?
I usually like to have about 3 things in my bucket list at a time.
Okay, this is good.
Yeah.
That feels doable.
It is doable. I don't want an overwhelming bucket list. I want a doable bucket list.
I remember writing a bucket list when I was in my 30s when I was blogging. I think I had like 120 things on it. That's a joke.
Oh, no.
That's impossible.
No. Yeah, no. 3.
Okay.
Okay.
I like this, Tiffany.
Glad we solved that.
Okay.
So what was
I'm going to write my bucket list tonight. Okay. I'm going to come up with 3 things.
Okay.
And I'll text you and tell you what they are.
Perfect.
Because you'll hold me accountable.
Okay, I'm so glad.
I asked you why write a book, and you said I had exhausted my bucket list and I needed a new thing.
Yes. And let me just say, and you know this, that writing a children's book is a lot more work than anyone would.
It's hard.
It's hard.
Yeah.
But it was so rewarding, and it was just fun. It was a fun project, and I don't know. Now the pressure's on to do another one because I've got a little grandson, and
you have to. I'm just saying. Or that grandson's gonna grow up and be like, what do they call you?
Baba. They call me
be like,
Baba.
Baba, where's my book?
I don't know, but Yeah, I want to write a book someday, so we'll see.
That should be on your bucket list for sure.
Yeah,
okay, so you can get the book anywhere.
On Amazon.
Amazon, tell us the name.
Amazon Prime. It's called The Curious June Bug and Her Wonderful Day.
It's super cute.
And it's all about just staying curious and asking questions and being watchful. And I mean, it's essentially a spiritual concept for littles.
I love it.
So,
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm a yes mom with books. And so like if we're anywhere, it's always a yes for books if you want them.
Yeah.
And so I always think it's fun when people are books to their kids as well. And so add this book to your library. What are you reading these days?
So I just finished reading Alicia Britt Choli's book, Anonymous.
I'm halfway through. I want to finish. It's not, I told you I have 100 books I need to finish.
Yeah.
That's not really true, but that's one of them.
It's great. And I have a lot of books going at one time, but that one was one that I read and have reread my highlights. And it's all about Jesus's hidden years. And to me, it's pretty personal because what we were talking about earlier in the podcast, just God doesn't waste those years that you are not out front or leading or mothering. He just doesn't waste those.
Yeah.
And even in Jesus' life, he was building in the buckets of experience that led to his public ministry.
Yeah.
And so that was a significant book for me this last few months.
She's coming on the show soon.
Yay.
I'm so excited. You introduced me to her. She was at a retreat that you put on, and we're going to be talking about Lent. She has a book that is specifically for Lent that I'm going to go through this year, and so she's coming on to talk about it. I met Alicia with you.
Yep.
And we were walking by the fish market in San Diego.
Yep.
And I introduced myself to her, and she said, I can't even do her sweet voice, but she said, so tell me, what is your assignment right now?
Wow.
And I wrote it in my journal because I literally was so taken aback. She didn't ask me what I did. She didn't ask me my marital status. She didn't ask me how many kids I had. Like, it makes me get a little teary-eyed because she literally was like, what's the assignment God has you on right now? And I'll never forget that.
Wow,
I love her so much.
I'm so excited.
Okay, I was going to say about a book I'm reading.
Yeah.
I told you earlier I'm in the middle of a lot of books. And my goal this year, do you have a goal for reading?
No.
Okay, do you want one? I think you should make one.
Give me one.
I'm not going to give you one.
You can hold me accountable.
Around the first of the year, someone was talking on Instagram about their goal for reading, and they said 50 books. And I read a lot of books in a year because of my job. But a lot of those books I'm skimming. I'm not like diving in, underlining. And so I'm not going to count those.
Okay.
And I'm going to do 50 this year. Wow. Yeah.
I always ask you, how do you get all that reading done? Like, seriously, because you are always.
I'm often always reading for work,
Yeah.
And so like last night I was reading a book in bed that I'm interviewing today after you.
Okay.
And so I'm like reading her book. I didn't read every page. I picked a couple chapters,
Yeah.
so I'm not going to count that.
Yeah.
Okay. Previously I would count that and I'd be like, I read 120 books this year. I'm going to do 50.
That's amazing.
I'm going to try. Anyhow, the book I'm reading right now is called Like Do. This title is terrible. Sorry, this book came out, and this is why I can talk. The first edition came out in 1976.
Okay.
I don't think they were into titles then. Okay. So this book is called Like Do Your Youth.
Okay.
You can't even understand
Yeah,
it. Come on. It's by Eugene Peterson, so we can't make fun of it.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a good guy.
Like Do, D-E-W, your youth, growing up with your teenager.
Ooh.
So I finished the first chapter. I've only read one chapter, and I'm highlighting so much.
How did you choose this book?
I think, honestly, you can tell you the truth, I think a couple months ago, we've had some hard years.
Yeah.
We have teenagers.
Yeah.
I think every parent is like, yes.
Yes.
So parenting teenagers is hard. And it's not because your teenagers are bad. It's just because you're parenting teenagers.
Yeah.
That's what I say all the time.
Yeah.
And I think I went online and I was like, Christian books about parenting teenagers. I'll read you this real quick. It said, at the very time in life, young adulthood, when it is most easy to suppose that we are in control, that's parents within our 30s, 40s, or 50s, that the world owes us a living, that through our education and training, we have reduced our environment to something manageable. At this time, God gives us a child to restore our sense of creaturehood, our own sense of being a child of God, so we may experience a renewal of the prerequisite condition for entering the kingdom of God.
Wow.
He basically is like, you get into your 30s, 40s, 50s, you got a teenager, you think life is good. I can now coast. Yep. And Eugene Peterson is like, actually, God wants you to be a child again and need him so deeply.
So deeply.
So teenagers, parents of teenagers. I'm reading that. I really like it.
Good.
I really like it. Tiffany, Thanks for coming on the happy hour.
Thank you for having me.
I will
It's
see
been
you.
a joy.
I will see you in San Quentin, and I will see you at There4, and I'm so excited. And and
All the things.
all the places I'll see you.
It seems like there was one other thing that.
Probably.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Thanks
Okay.
for coming on the happy hour.
Love you a lot,
Love
Jamie.
you too.